Hey everybody, thanks for joining me on another one of our Public Land Do-It-Yourself series. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about tag terms and drawing opportunities and units and zones and preference points and things like that. Typically late winter and early spring are the time to try to draw a whitetail tag in some of the states. And it can be kind of daunting because it's very complicated at times, and a lot of states have different regulations and methods for drawing or issuing drawn tags. So let me just kind of walk you through some of this that will help you simplify the process and really understand how the process works, particularly if you are doing this for the first time. Really, it could just kind of be overwhelming. And in fact, I've talked to a lot of people who just said, you know, it's just too much trouble, and that's the reason that they haven't gone on a deer hunt in another state. So I really want to help with that, and let me just kind of talk you through some of the stuff. Let's start with the issue of over-the-counter versus draw tag states. Now there's three different kinds. There is unlimited draws, and then there are limited entry draws, and then there are over-the-counter tags. And we're just specifically talking about whitetails here, not about elk and mule deer, bear, and other things like that. So keep that in mind. Over-the-counter tags are very simple. All you do is you just go to a licensed vendor, and you walk up there, you pay your money, you get your tag, and you're ready to go hunting. Quite a few whitetail states are that way. And in fact, some of the destination states that are popular states to go to, like Missouri, Wisconsin, Ohio, Indiana, those are all over-the-counter states, and Oklahoma's another one. So those are very, very simple. Okay, now the ones with the limited draws, they're a little more complicated, and they're not all the same. Iowa is a good example of a limited draw state. Okay, Kansas is also a limited draw state. Illinois is it's a limited draw, but they issue enough tags that you pretty much, if you apply for a tag, you get one. Iowa can take you up to 4 years to get a tag. Now, the states that issue bonus points or preference points, these are something that are different too. The states that have limited entry, they either give you a bonus point or a preference point, and there's a different, and I'm speaking in generalities here because every state seems like they have different methods of doing this and have different names of calling them. There's just no uniform system for this. But let's go back to Iowa for a second, where there is a preference point system, meaning that every time you apply for a tag, if you don't draw, you get a preference point. And the way a preference point works is that they draw from the persons who have the most preference points first. So let's say you apply for 3 years and don't draw, and you have 3 preference points, and you're applying for a zone or area of the state where 3 preference points will get you a tag. So what they do is they draw from everybody that has the most preference points first, and then they drop back down. Now there might be somebody who is just hoping to hunt Iowa, who's been applying for 5 or 6 years. They got, say, 6 points. So when they decide to apply, then boom, they get drawn first, and then everybody with 5 gets drawn, then everybody with 4 gets drawn, and then they're down to a percentage of people with 3 points that get drawn. Okay, that's different than bonus points, because bonus points typically just mean you get your name in the drawing an additional time, so everybody's in the same pool. With a bonus point system, you could theoretically get drawn in your first year, or you could go for 5, 6, or more years in some cases without getting drawn. So it's not a very fair system compared to preference points, but there's a few states that use that, and that basically just means if you don't draw this year, then next year your name is in the drawing twice, and the year after that your name is in the drawing 3 times, and so it's more of a random drawing than a preference drawing. And theoretically you could, and some people do, they draw the first year, or you could just, theoretically you could never draw. So anyway, that's the different with the system. Now back to the preference points. Most states will allow you to just buy a preference point, so you don't have to pay for all the tags and licenses. In Iowa, your tags and licenses are almost $600. So if you actually were to apply every year, you have to pay $600, and then you got to wait about 5-6 months while they draw interest on your money before they send it back to you without the preference point fee and the other, usually some filing fees and things like that. So it's a lot cheaper to just, for example, Iowa, Kansas, most of these are $50 for a preference point. Montana's another one like that. Wyoming, they're pretty much all about $50 for a preference point. Some of them are less. So if you know you're not going to draw, you just don't have enough points, just pay the $50 for a preference point. And if you really think in some point in the future, maybe even 3-4 years from now, you want to go to one of these destination states, and then go ahead and just buy a couple preference points this year or next year or whatever. Iowa's draw is the toughest, but there are other states that have zones that take multiple points to draw. So keep that in mind. Another way to get tags is through surplus tags, landowner tags, or leftover tags. And surplus tags and leftover tags are basically the same thing. It just depends on what state you're dealing with that will call it different things. So these basically mean that in any zone where all of the tags aren't bought, then you can buy leftover or surplus tags. And there's two ways this can happen. Number one is if the zone is undersubscribed. Let's say they have 500 tags and only 450 people apply for those tags, and there's 50 more tags that you can buy at a later date, well past the application period. Okay, another way that this can happen is if there's all 500 tags, say we're back to an example of 500 tags in a zone, if they sell out, but people don't purchase their tags by a certain date, then you can go in and buy those tags, and typically they have a specific time when those tags go on sale, and they sell really, really fast. Landowner tags are issued to the landowners, and the landowners can use them themselves, or they can sell them in some states. Now, this is a really great way to sometimes get some really good tags. The landowners can sell the tags to anyone they want to. For the normal do-it-yourself public land bow hunter like myself, a landowner tag isn't necessarily a good option, because the landowner is probably going to hope that you're going to hunt the land, and he's going to charge you a trespass fee, or he might even issue his landowner tags to a guide. So that's not typically the way a DIY public land hunter like myself would go get a tag, but it's just an option for you. Another thing that you need to understand is zones and units. They're pretty much the same thing. Typically, it's just some states call them zones and some states call them units. And typically, a state is divided up into these specific areas, and there will be a specific number of tags in each of these zones or units. And you can look at the stats on the state DNR's website typically and figure out how many points it's going to take you to draw in a specific zone. There's parts of Iowa, for example, where you can draw every other year for a bow tag because they're just the way less desirable zones. If you want to be a shotgun hunter or a muzzleloader hunter, then you can draw Iowa more often than you can for a bow hunter. But the most desirable zones in Iowa, they issue 6,000 total non-resident tags in Iowa, and there's typically about 20 to 25,000 people that apply for them. So the most desirable zones for bow hunters are typically going to take you 4 or 5 years to draw. Some other states are easier, and they have some states that you'll be able to draw every year, and others that are more difficult to draw. And you just have to really do your research on each of the units. And most of the state DNR websites, like I said, have this. They've got this data on their website. Sometimes it's very difficult to find, and you really got to mine for it. But typically it's there, and it'll really help you figure out, if you say, I want to go hunting this year, it'll help you figure out where you could actually hunt this year if it's not an over-the-counter state. Some states require non-residents to apply for a tag, but they have an unlimited number of tags. So it's different than an over-the-counter tag where you just walk up when you show up and hunt, but you have to buy the tag ahead of time before you go. And North Dakota, South Dakota, Illinois is kind of like that. But that's another option that that would need to be explored depending on what state you're going to hunt in. The application period is typically in the spring. A lot of states open it about the 1st of April or the 1st of March, and they typically, applications run either 4 to 6 weeks. There's a couple of states that open on January 1st, but most of them are, they're all in the late winter and early spring pretty much. So it's something you got to watch out for. And then typically you'll get your drawing results in May, sometimes June. So I hope this has been helpful to you. Before I let you go, I just wanted to mention this book. It's The Freelance Bow Hunter. It's a do-it-yourself strategies for the traveling whitetail hunter. It is the best $20 you'll ever spend if you're going to travel to another state to hunt whitetails. There's just tons of information in here on choosing the properties and how to scout once you find the properties, how to find the right places to hunt, and equipment issues, and how you're going to eat without spending a fortune at a restaurant a couple, 3 times a day. And there's just a lot of things like that, how to hunt on a budget for the average guy who's a do-it-yourself weekend warrior who wants to go to another state and really hunt hard and have a chance to kill a nice mature buck. This book also has a section in it with 16 states, and it's broken down by county, and it tells you which counties in the state have produced the most Pope and Young bucks. So whenever you're looking at a state and you're trying to figure out what area of the state to hunt, this is a tremendous reference because you can cross-reference the areas where they have public land associated with where the best quality areas of the state are to hunt. So like I said, that's the best $20 you can spend. Go to BernieOutdoors.com and you can buy this book there, BernieOutdoors.com. So if you have more questions, leave a comment below. I'd be happy to answer them, and I'll do the best I can. And then also, hit the subscribe button in the corner here, and there's tons more videos on here about do-it-yourself public land hunting. My YouTube channel has a lot of videos on there, so they're all helpful to the guy like you and me who just wants to go shoot a nice buck and enjoy a kind of, I guess, a deer hunting vacation, but in a place that's different than what you're used to. So thanks for being a part of this channel. I really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you on the next Do-It-Yourself Public Land Strategies video.